So thanks for joining me this morning. We came here so we can talk about the class project that due. Comes from the accounting assessment handbook that I was given when I started here. Okay, so I did not change the project. I just changed the companies around a little bit. If you have not done so already, I posted everything last night onto Moodle. So onto Moodle, you are going to have a Word document that has the instructions in the rubric, which I'm going to go through with you here in a little bit. It also has an Excel file, and it has two 10K reports. And the 10K are annual reports that are required by the SEC that have to be filed every year for publicly traded companies. And in those reports, you find a lot of useful information. You guys are not going to actually have to use the report. I put it in there as a reference guide for you so you can look through it if you want to. But inside those statements, you find their financial statements. So also in the file, I have pulled all their financial statements out into an Excel file on there for you as well. Okay. So for this project, what you're going to do is you're going to use the information that we were going through in chapter 14, and you're going to compare two companies. Okay, you're going to do a comparative and a common income statement and balance sheet for each of them. And then you're going to calculate their ratios and write a short 3 to 5, 6-page paper somewhere in there where you explain the ratios, and then you give your advice if you were going to investors on which company you think would be the best bet to put their money into. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of read down the file sheet, the Word file I have in there. This project is the analysis of two publicly traded furniture companies. Okay, so you're going to be looking at La-Z-Boy Incorporated and Flexsteel Industries. La-Z-Boy's is one of the larger ones. It is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, while Flexsteel is a smaller company, and it is traded on the NASDAQ exchange. Okay, like I said, you have a 10K report for each of them. You need to write a 3 to 5 page paper and produce comparative and common income statements on the Excel form. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about is the instructions for the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, if you have it open or when you go to open it, okay, there are two tabs that are already filled out. They're called La-Z-Boy and Flexsteel. And on those tabs, I have just copied over the income statement and the balance sheet that you are going to use for this project. Okay, and then I have all the tabs already labeled for you. So if you scroll across the bottom on the tabs, the next one over is a comparative tab. As you can see, it is absolutely blank. There is nothing in there when you go to look at it. Okay, so on the instruction sheet on number 3, after you've downloaded and examined it and just kind of played around with it, it says complete a 3-year comparative income statement for both companies. This is where you're going to do that. So you can copy and paste the income statement from each company, and then you just have to add the 3 columns onto the end of it. And if you've seen my video on comparative income statements, all you're doing is comparing everything to a base year. It has in the instructions that you're using 2016 as a base year because you're going to have income statement information for 2016, 2017, and 2018. Okay, so you can put both companies onto the one sheet for the comparative. The next tab over says LB common, and the one after that is FS common. So that is for instruction number 4. You're going to do common statements, both income statements and balance sheets for both companies. Okay, so you'll have a separate tab for each of those. On the La-Z-Boy one, just copy and paste the income statement and the balance sheet onto that sheet, add the 2 columns onto the end of it. You only need to do 2 years when it comes to the common statements, okay? Only 2017 and 2018. And then the last tab over on Excel is labeled ratios. And here I want you to put all of your ratios. You can just make a heading, one for La-Z-Boy, one for Flexsteel, and write the ratios down. And all the ratios that need to be completed are going to be listed later in the assignment under when you get, so we have on the second page under where the paper assignments are, it's going to tell you in each section that you need to talk about certain ratios, and then it's going to give you a list of ratios for each section. Well, all those ratios that are listed there need to be calculated on this tab. okay? 4, 8, there's 13 of them. Okay, so 13 total ratios for each company that you were calculating on this tab. Okay. The last page on the instructions is a rubric. This Excel spreadsheet and all the computations on this is worth half the points for this project. Okay, this is a 100-point project. 50 of the points just comes from making the comparative and the common income statements and then calculating the ratios. And all that was just covered in my chapter 14 videos. And if you have any trouble working with Excel, feel free to reach out to me. If you're not comfortable with it or you're not used to it, I can give you some little tips and stuff like that. So, is there any questions on the Excel portion of what we're going to do right now? Nobody? Okay, so on to the paper instructions then. I gave very specific instructions on here. So one, the assignment, submit with a cover page. Okay, and then I lay out exactly how the cover page will be. You can see that when you look at your instructions. 2, I do not want a double space paper. It drives me crazy because I'm not printing it off and reading it. So please make it single spaced. But when you open up Word, it automatically puts a space between the paragraphs. I like that. So keep it set like that. Just flip the font up to 12-point Calibri. Okay, exactly how this page is that I sent to you as the instructions are done. So follow the same formatting on that. Your paper needs to cover the following topic. Okay, so each bullet point I listed here, except for the second one, is going to be a paragraph. The second one is going to be 2 paragraphs. So your paper is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs to it. Okay, it should be 3 to 7 pages long. I don't expect anybody to get to 7 pages, but some people like to write. So you should be able to get it in 3 to 5 pages, all the information. Okay. Your first paragraph is your introduction. Explain why you're writing this paper. You're writing it because you're comparing these 2 companies to give advice to investors. Okay, you want to make something catchy in the introduction. Why do I want to read it? Okay, what's interesting about La-Z-Boy and Flexsteel? Maybe a little nugget on each of them, or just something to catch my attention and let me know what you're doing. So that's your introductory paragraph. The next 2 paragraphs, you're going to talk about each company in each one of them. So the first paragraph is about La-Z-Boy. Okay, where are they located? What kind of furniture do they produce? Okay, what kind of market segments do they have? Do they sell bedroom, kitchen, living room furniture? Is that how they segment it? Where do they locate at? Okay, do they sell only in the United States? Or are they global? Or are they worldwide? And this section is where you want to talk about their revenues and their gross profit and their net income from using your trend analysis that you did in the comparative income statement. Okay, so you explain a little bit about the company background, what they do, and a little bit about their financials, their revenues, gross profit, net income. Okay, so you do that for La-Z-Boy in 1 paragraph, Flexsteel in the 2nd paragraph. When you get to your 4th paragraph, it says explain and analyze the liquidity and solvency ratios for each company. Okay, so you're going to explain what liquidity is, why it is important, and then you will go to your ratios that you calculated on the Excel sheet and just list what they are for each company, how you calculated them. And then at the end, you're going to give a little conclusion on what you found there, the capital structure of each company. So the capital structure means how is it set up? How is it financed? Is it heavily equity owned? Is it a lot of equity ownership and little debt? Is it a lot of debt and little equity? And as it says here, yes, and which company seems to be at the most financial risk? You talk about its solvency, which company is most likely to cover its debt, and which one is most liquid, which one can cover its current liabilities the easiest. Okay, the next paragraph down, you move on to talk about asset management ratios. This is the accounts receivable turnover, the collection period, the inventory turnover, and the average sales period. So once again, you kind of give it an introductory sentence, explain how you found these numbers for each company, and then give a conclusion on which company is handling their assets more efficiently. Next paragraph, you do the exact same thing, but with the profitability ratios, the 5 I have listed there. Then you give a conclusion on which one seems to be more profitable, which has returned a greater value to its shareholders. Use the numbers, and then finally your conclusion. I want you to write a short paragraph conclusion that if you were advising someone who working for a financial investment company and you had somebody come to you with a couple $100,000 and they wanted to invest in a furniture company, which one of these companies would you advise them to and why? Okay, so that's how your paper should be structured. It's a fairly simple format. Just follow it right along. Please make sure you have good flow because it is part of the grading rubric. That's the last thing we'll go over. As I mentioned before, the Excel sheet is worth 50 points. This is a 100-point project. You can look through it and see it's excellent, good, fair, or poor, and I have points labels for under each of them and how many areas you can have on each page to fall into each one. I also like to see good form on your financial statements. If you just copy and paste them, you will have, it will be good form because that's the way they should look. Or you can write, put it in and design it yourself if you want, as long as it stays in the proper form. The next major thing is worth 30 points. It is professional writing. And what I'm looking for there is how your paper flows. Okay, good transitions from one paragraph to another, using proper grammar, using proper accounting languages, and avoiding slang. Okay. Grammar errors. I am not an English teacher. I do not catch them all, but they cannot be blatant. Okay. And again, the same categories, you can look and see where the points fall into. 10 points, I apply to critical thinking. And I want you to use critical thinking in each section when you draw that conclusion from the ratios you found. Okay, because you're going to be comparing and contrasting each one. So 10 points to that. You get all 10 points as long as you demonstrate some critical thinking. You shouldn't just say, well, FlexSteel is more profitable. Say FlexSteel is more profitable because of this, this, and this. Okay, they are controlling their operating income, making their gross profit, or operating expenses, making their gross profit higher, stuff like that. And then finally, 10 points for just following the directions. There's very detailed directions for what to do in the Excel spreadsheet and very detailed what to do in the Word document. Okay. This will be due Sunday, April 12th by midnight. So Easter Sunday, we have a test, I believe, right that week also. Okay, we'll get this all done. It'll give me plenty of time to get it graded. And I plan on sending it back maybe if revisions need to be made, but we'll see how well everybody does on the first attempt. Thank you for joining me today. I just wanted to go through that with everybody and give everybody a chance to ask questions. Is there any questions? Does it seem pretty straightforward? One last thing. Has anybody watched any of my videos and can give me any feedback? I have heard that when I'm standing up by the board, it's hard to hear me. And maybe that the board is a little bit hard to see. Has anybody else experienced that? See Nicole shaking her head. I got something going on here. Mike is typing in, the board is hard to see. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do, like I got some bar stools sitting over here. And I think maybe if I set my computer closer to my screen up here, maybe I stand off to the side and I talk next to my computer and you just see my hand sticking in, writing on the board. That might alleviate some of that problem. All right, so if nobody else has any other questions, that's all I got for you this morning. I just kind of wanted to check in with everybody, give out the instructions in person for those that wanted to come in and maybe give everybody a chance to explore the Zoom meetings if they haven't used it yet. Because when it comes to test time, we'll definitely get one of these back on. People can come on if needed to ask questions before the exam. Okay. Oh, thank you guys. Have a great day.